Today, I'm gonna be showing you guys how to become a great controller player. After watching this video, I'm pretty confident you'll go from being an average or kind of good player to an absolute great player. I put a lot of time into this video, so as always, if you find yourself enjoying it, please don't hesitate to drop a like on it. And of course, if you like the content, subscribe to the channel. Alright, so the first tip for controller players to become great at Fortnite is to try new things. It's insanely easy to get stuck in your old ways of doing stuff instead of branching out and trying to learn new stuff. The two main areas that controller players get kind of stuck up on in their old ways is their binds and the sort of controller like grip that they use. As for your binds, at this point we're literally like 4.5 years into Fortnite being out, and controller players have had the ability to have custom binds for years now. It's really easy to just stay on your old binds that you're comfortable with. However, you can start to see way more progress if you change those binds to be more optimized. And going right along with that, people get way too stuck in their ways playing on standard controller. If you don't know what that means you're either on a PS4 or an Xbox One controller. And when you're holding the controller, you're holding it just like this. You have your index fingers on the triggers and you click all the buttons in your controller with your thumbs. I kinda hate to say it, but that's sort of outdated. If you have custom binds, it's definitely still possible to do well with that sort of controller grip. However, it is pretty evident that either paddles or claw is way better. There are only maybe a handful of top tier controller players that you can name that don't use claw or paddles. And the reasoning for that is that they're just way better. It's way easier to improve in skill on claw or paddles, and the skill cap, like how good you can get at the game, is way higher on claw or paddles. When you're using that standard grip, even if you are on custom bind, realistically you're gonna hit a skill ceiling at some point, and you really can't get any better until you switch to either claw or paddles. And I think the number one fear why people don't switch is because they think it's too late. So on this one, you're just gonna have to trust me. It is not too late to switch to either claw or paddle. In a video recently, I literally tried claw for the first time ever for around like 2 or 3 hours, and I was already getting pretty decent on it. And the same thing with paddles when I switched like 3 years ago. Initially, when you first start learning, you are going to be worse, but I guarantee you within a week of you consistently using whatever new thing that you're using, in literally that short of a time frame, you will be better than you were before. Like I said, that's just something that you're gonna have to trust me on. I went through it. I've seen a ton of other people go through it, and every single time these controller players' skills get way better, and it does not take that long to learn. So once you follow tip number 1, you're ready for tip number 2, which is to play the meta. As it currently stands, chapter 3 is a very heavy spray meta. This just basically means that the shotguns are a lot weaker, and like your Stinger SMGs and MK7s are going to be so much better. Obviously, keyboard and mouse players can be super good in this meta. However, I think that controller players do have an advantage. In those shotgun metas, keyboard and mouse players 100% have an advantage. The flick shots that they can hit, the different angles that they can take, everything about shotgun metas, keyboard and mouse players have the advantage. So now, finally, it is time for controller players to have that advantage. So if you're a controller player, you're gonna want to capitalize on that and make sure you know how to play the meta. That's gonna involve a ton of spraying. That's gonna involve the use of SMGs. Basically, in your fights, you're gonna want to play more to those strengths compared to like just using a shotgun and box fighting. And playing the meta also means knowing how to defend against the meta. Ken Beans has a couple really good arena tips videos, and he has a lot of tips on how to defend against this meta. Just as 2 quick examples, he said for this meta, it can be really good to incorporate a fishing spot around where you land. This is because you can go and fish, and now you have really quick heals, so you don't have to spend 5 seconds popping minis or a big. Instead, you can use fish and be healed up in just like a second. In another one of his tips, he explained how to escape a box when someone has got you low. So basically, you're gonna want to edit out of the back and then continue to place a ramp over your head, and you're gonna want to go out of the back wall a few times. So now you should have time to heal, or you should have an opportunity to get a shot in on your opponent. So Ken Beans has a ton of really helpful tips just like those. And now for tip 3, it's to take practicing in Fortnite a little more seriously. If you do want to improve and you want to improve quickly, you gotta have an actual plan in place and have like goals set. So like 1 week you can decide that you really want to get better at piece control. You can dedicate that entire week to really practicing piece control, and you can set a plan like every time you play, you hop into a Raiders piece control map and you play it for like 30 minutes or an hour. Stuff like that is really gonna help you, especially if you have a plan in place. And if you're really serious about it and you're willing to invest money into it, there's this website called Novos where you have to pay monthly. However, you basically put in your goals and they'll give you a personalized training plan. So that way your entire training plan is made for you. Otherwise, just utilize some good creative practice maps and make sure you consistently play on them and actually try to practice. The next way to get a lot better on controller and be a great controller player is to play more challenging game modes. And this is not really only for controller players, it's pretty much for everybody that wants to get better at the game. But you really won't get that much better just by pub stomping in casual games, or especially in these creative modes like free-for-alls and 1v1. Those modes are fun, but most of the time they're only fun because you're the best player in the lobby and you're fighting a bunch of bots. If you're really trying to improve at Fortnite, which I'm guessing is why you're on this video, those modes, while they're fun, are really just a waste of time as far as improving improving. Where you're really gonna see improvement is playing in these high skill games, playing in stuff like tournaments or arena, or you can even still play those modes like 1v1s or zone wars as long as you're playing with players that are better than you. It can get frustrating when you're getting absolutely destroyed, but playing with players that are better than you, you're gonna learn a ton from them. You're gonna learn how to counter all the really good players' moves, all the really good players' piece control, and along with that, you're gonna learn all the really good players' piece control that you can use on other players. So what can get frustrating, where it pays off is when you start to notice your insane skill progression. And the only way that's gonna happen quickly is if you play against players that are better than you. And when you are in these modes playing against players that are better than you, don't play scared, play confidently. You'd be pretty surprised by how much your skill increases just when you have a good, positive, confident mindset. There's obviously a difference between playing confident and playing like cocky or dumb. You're obviously not gonna wanna like W key every single person you see. You're not gonna wanna constantly jump in people's boxes. However, when you're in a fight and make a tiny mistake or a person tags you for 20 damage, don't immediately box up and then play defense. You wanna try to stay on the offense, take advantage of the exploits in the game, and literally, even if you think that the player you're fighting is a lot better than you, play like you think you're better than them. Have that same confidence that you do when you fight a worse player, and I guarantee you, you'll see way more success in those fights. And then the next tip is to be picky about the teammates that you play with. The number one thing in finding teammates in team player modes is to make sure that those players can hold their own. And this doesn't really matter as much if you're just playing like public matches with casual players. However, in any sort of arena or competitive mode, you're going to want to play with players that can at least hold their own. And if you can find players that can even carry you, then play with them. One of the worst things you can do in Fortnite is go play like arena or competitive with players that are worse than you and players that leave you in like 1v2, 1v3 situations all the time. Those players are making the game way harder for you. A lot of times they're making you lose points or waste your time playing competitive, and they're also ruining your mindset and your enjoyment for the game. Obviously, if you're getting 1v3'd and getting destroyed every single game, that's going to get annoying, and you're probably going to want to get off of Fortnite. And to kind of go with that, in competitive, there's typically only ever one controller player on a team, and that goes for duos or trios. A balanced team really needs both controller players and mouse and keyboard players. Mouse and keyboard players are really just going to be better at doing the tunneling stuff. They're going to be better with rotations, while controller players are typically actually better at fighting and getting a lot of the kills. So if you're playing like competitive duos and you notice that you're not doing very well and you have two controller players on your team, I'm not going to say it's for certain, but that is likely a big contributor to why you guys aren't doing well. Those are the tips for you controller players. I really think if you actually apply these tips, they will help you a ton in game, and you really will become a great controller player very quickly.